I'd also like to talk to you about filters. We haven't dealt with filters yet, and I'm a little hesitant to deal with filters, and yet at the same time, they're there. Some of you are finding them, so I want to kind of deal with them and what's good about them and what's not. Filters are a whole series of menu items that are up here, and you can kind of see them, that do special graphic and visual things. Don't overdo them. In fact, I had a professor in college, and this was back in 1994 or so this is a while ago, but she said if I see a Photoshop filter, you fail the project. Because everybody loves them, everybody uses them, and they all look the same when you do that. Now, having said that, I'm not quite so harsh, and in this project, maybe a Photoshop filter wouldn't be a bad thing to play with. And there's a whole ton of them. I'm obviously not going to go through them all, but I want to go over just a couple of quick things. One, there is a filter gallery, which is rather nice, but I'm just going to go and do a distort filter here. And there's a whole bunch of them, but we'll just do we'll do a wave filter. So now, before I do that, I want to make sure I'm set on, okay, so I want to be on a different layer. So I'm going to click on the layer that you want to set the filter on, and then you go to the filter, distort, and I'm going to do a wave filter. And then a new window is going to pop up here, and it's going to say, oh, it must be rasterized. So again, very much like a lot of our tools in Photoshop, remember, Photoshop is a pixel-based program. So if you want everything to stay vector-based, for scaling purposes or whatever, you really should be an illustrator, okay? Just to say that. So you shouldn't be annoyed that this keeps popping up. Of course it's going to keep popping up. It's always going to pop up. Photoshop likes pixel-based layers. So we're going to click OK. It's going to rasterize that shape layer. So you can see right here that shape layer is now rasterized. And now we're going to get to this window here. And you can see a preview of what's going to happen right here in the window. It's cool. This is really cool. You can really play with it. Number of generators. Okay, so the number of waves that it's going to make. The wavelength. Okay, minimum and maximum. Okay, so the minimum, if you have the minimum over to the left, then the minimum part of the wave is going to actually get closer to the center of where the line was. The maximum, okay, will increase how far away those waves get, okay? And that's in distance, like along the line, okay? So how long these curves are. If you want them to be really short, see how you bring the wavelength back, and now the waves have a lot of energy to them, okay? So wavelength controls, really, if you want to speak in physics terms, it controls the distance between the points on the ridges or the heights of the top part of the wave. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, from crest to crest. That's what wavelength is, basically. The amplitude is going to be how much, like how deep the waves are. So if I increase the amplitude, you can see that it's now going further. Let me increase my wavelength a little bit here so we can kind of see better. There we go. So if I increase my minimum, okay, you'll see that it allows it to only do certain things. It increases the minimum amount that it moves side to side, okay, and it moves those out so that they're not right down along the center line. Okay, so usually keep the minimum at 1, and you can change the amplitude. And you change the number of generators, obviously changes the randomness of the wave and all sorts of other things. And then you have the scale. Horizontal and vertical scale. So horizontal scale, I can adjust it, and vertical scale, I can adjust it. That's almost cheating, because it's really what it's doing is it's adjusting the amplitude and the wavelength, in my mind. So I don't almost ever use that. I like to play with these sliders until I get it to look the way I want. Okay? So now I can just play that. This right here, what will happen is if you hit the wraparound, if your things go out of the page, they will come back around on the other side, which in this case probably you don't want. Okay? So we just like it cut off. So anyway, let's just say I've got it. Oh, there's also different types: sine wave, triangle wave, or square wave. And it changes the look very dramatically. Most people stay on sine. So I'm just going to click OK. It's going to do its calculations, and look what it did to my line. Now, let's say, for instance, I want to do that same wave filter on each one of these purple lines. That's fine. You can go back to your filters menu and notice right here at the top, what is at the top? The wave filter. It will do it exactly the same as the last one I did if you just click on this. Now, if you want to do the similar thing, but you want to adjust it a little bit differently for each one, that makes sense. You want to go back to your distort, go back to your wave, and click on it again. Okay, it must be rasterized. Click OK. And now it remembers the settings that you did last time, and you can adjust them a little bit. And click OK. And now it does it on the next one. But it's not identical. It's slightly different, which is kind of nice. Because if I just go and I just go to filter and wave, it's going to do it exactly the same as the other one. So now this one and the first one are basically identical. That's kind of boring, right? I mean, I guess it all depends on what you're trying to do, but it's kind of boring. It's boring to me. There are a ton of them. You can do so many of these things. Let's do one more. There's a twirl. Everybody loves a twirl. So I'm going to show you the twirl and tell you really not to do it. Here, and this is a lot of filters are like this too, it gives you the preview, but it zooms in a lot. And you can zoom out with these little magnification buttons here. There we go. So now it's going to show me really the whole thing. Can't fit it in. So what it does is it starts to twirl that shape. Now my problem with the fact of what it's doing is it's twirling around the center at all times. So what this filter essentially does, if you use it too much, is it puts your emphasis right at a bullseye in the middle. And I don't like that. I don't like it at all. So I caution you against this, especially if you use it on objects that are right in the center. Here, this one's off to the left. So if I just use a touch of the a little bit of a twirl, I think it won't be too bad. Look a little bit like this. Okay? And then I can even move it, go to the move tool, and I can move it around, take it. Oh, see, I like that. See how this now moves up through this circle, goes off the page, it comes back in, and then moves into that circle and ends there? I like that. That's got good motion to it. That's the start of a good design right there, is how those kind of start together. Okay? So the filters can be used. Use them judiciously, I guess I should say. Don't do every single layer with a filter. It'll become very obvious, and then your design will also start to look like everybody else's, okay? Because filters do things in a preset way. Maybe if you were to use a filter, this would also be a good time to go back into that layer, and now might be a good time to use the smudge tool. See? And start putting in this random human element into the smudge, into that filter, that filtered element, so that, again, it doesn't look exactly like, you know, the typical, oh look, you used the filter on that layer. You know what I mean? Like you can really go in and kind of edit them with the smudge tool, take things, pull things, blur things with the blur tool, whatever. Paint on top of it with the brush tool, that sort of thing. Make it your own. Really look at it and say, do I really want to do this? And again, with the filters, especially if you have multiple layers and you're doing a filter on each layer, it also might be a good idea to save before you start doing the filters so that you can revert the file back without the filters if you really hate what you've done, but you've gone so far that your undos won't cover you. Does that make sense to everybody? I think that's a good technique too. Any questions? Okay.